So, have children gone mad? Well, they have not in theory, but this is part 2, and we delve into some more information and I look at some more stories or some cases where we have actually seen some options that we could have avoided. So, coming up, you'll see some details, some information, and remember to hit the like and subscribe button and don't forget the bell. Make sure that you get more information coming up. So let's start by looking at some of the statistics that we have around the world. And granted, sometimes stats can be a little bit boring, but these are very, very important to look at. So I'm going to look at 2 main countries at this point and can't look at the whole world. So if we look at the UK stats, we're looking at teenagers aged between 13 to 19 are twice as likely to be fatally stabbed. In 2023, 42 lives were lost due to stabbing. That's excluding the stats on stabbing done by teens. I have got all the links in here where these stats have come from. I'll put it in the description, this whole pack, so you can actually access all these links. Another stat is knife crimes are up by 5% to 2023 and showing 48,000 compared to the 46,000 a year ago. So that's a huge jump in plain simple numbers. In 2023, it was said that we had a high level of 358,000 teenagers having been physically injured in a 12-month period. And that's not just specific to knife crime, that's across youths, right? So that's UK's. Let's look at some US stats. Guns are used in 46% of adolescent suicides and 93% of adolescent homicides, and are second and third highest causes of deaths in kids between 14 and 17. So if you're thinking of a 14-year-old, they could be holding a firearm, which is a concerning thought. Next item is teenagers carrying firearms have increased over the last 2 decades. That's a short period, but the massive difference has gone up. You're looking up by 41%. That's huge. Third one, the child firearm mortality, number of deaths by children, has doubled in the US from 2013 to 2021. That is a frightening statistic that we are looking at, people. We need to consider this as a pandemic of its own accord. We are sitting with huge concerns with regards to children, not teenagers and late and early 20-year-olds. We're looking at children here. Last one. Children aged between 0 to 5-year-olds are accounting for 29% of intentional deaths. 6 to 10-year-olds, 14, 11 to 15 is 33%, and finally 16 to 17 is 23. So let me just make sure, sorry, that would be unintentional deaths. My stats are wrong there on the board, but it's unintentional deaths. So obviously that's accidental deaths. But, I mean, okay, this would be firearms, but we're still looking at children having firearms in their hands, and we are looking at some concerns here. So granted, let's be honest, we've got to remember, the UK versus the States is a big difference in size. We know size does matter, and obviously on the map you can see the size of UK versus the size of the USA. Big difference. But the stats still showing a massive increase. No matter which country you're looking at, no matter in the world, you're going to see a huge increase. And we need to actually look at this and see what we can look at. Right? Again, the breakdown in environments and ethnicity. We're not looking at this. I'm not focusing on the gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation. My focus is on the future children, and we need to make sure that they're better adults, no matter where they come from, what their interests are. It's about lives mattering. That's what we need to look at. So why are these children carrying whatever weapon they're carrying? We're looking at the reasons and the children, why they're carrying, and the following have been provided from these investigations. They're looking at fear, being bullied, they want to protect themselves. Then there's this funny one of peer influence. I better carry too because my friend is also carrying. And the last one baffles me. Show off. It's a fashion statement. I mean, the whole concept is if you're carrying, the aim is to use it. And, you know, if you've got a 13-year-old, a 6-year-old, whatever it is, carrying a weapon, their aim is to use it. And we need to try and remove these actions, these items, to make sure that these children are not needing to do this. Okay, so my background. I grew up in South Africa, Johannesburg, also known as Gangster's Paradise. You look at these stats and it's a very violent country. However, it is also a beautiful country and some wonderful people in that country with absolutely beautiful emotions, beautiful cultures. It's wonderful. However, there's such a massive poverty line due to the corrupt government. Life there unfortunately means nothing to anyone because of the corruption, because of the poverty. And you will be killed for your mobile or your cell phone. And to be honest and put it in perspective with the exchange rate, you will be killed for the equivalent of $2 or £2. That is how little your life is worth in that country. And that is where I come from. Granted, I'm not there anymore, but that was where I lived. What do we need to teach? Because it's shown me what we need to spread and teach our children. We need to make sure all lives matter. We have all these movements, but it's irrelevant. We need to make sure our children are taught that all lives matter. All genders need to be respected as there are lives. And we all bring something to this world. We all bring magic to this world. We are all unique, and we need to understand that. Tolerance for difference, whether it's for cultures, disabilities, or just preference for simple opinions that we need to learn and accept. We need to let our children know that it's wonderful to be different. We can't all have the same opinion. Our lives would be so boring. If our children were able to talk and learn more about each other, gaining that understanding about their friends and other people around them, this would remove the reason, some of the reasons for the weapons. I mean, obviously we've got to do this piece by piece. But if we are able to get our children learning more about each other, understanding more about each other, we could start gaining more love, more tolerance, more respect for one another. However, as it's highlighted, these lessons have to be taught from zero. We can't expect this to happen osmosis. We can't expect it to happen from 7-year-old when they start school. We need to start these lessons from day one. We love them, we protect them, but also they have to learn about the world around them. Let's look at it as a comparison. If there's a single case of a success story of drugs, all stories end badly. I mean, show me a real success story of putting cocaine, heroin, or anything else into your body, and where's a good story that this ends well? Why carry a weapon? Same reasoning. Any success story out there? Please let me know. What is good going to come out of carrying a weapon? Yes, you might protect yourself, but what's the alternative? You're going to land up in prison. So if we can try and convince them from an early age, there's no value putting drugs in your body because you're just going to poison your body. Well, it's a point of carrying a weapon because something bad is going to happen. Teach them from a young age. There is no success story. Why do you bother? Okay? Why do people bully? I mean, let's go back to that reason why they carry these weapons. Why do people bully? At the end of the day, it's control. They want to control someone else. People are different. Scared? Quite frankly, a lot of the bullies are actually scared and it's a cover. Or they want to try and act superior. Again, we as parents teach our little ones, young, that superiority and control is not a good behavior. They won't pick up this behavior. Can this be enhanced through school years? Yes. I mean, if we can try and start adding this to the curriculums throughout our countries, helping, if it's taught to them while they're little and enhanced through our curriculum, it's going to make a big difference. But we need to stop the control, the fear, understanding people are different, and it's great people are different because we'll all die of boredom. And stop that concept of superiority. Why? Why do we want to be superior to others? We have to, as parents, and not let children want that superiority. We all want to be equal. Granted, there's power and everything else that comes along with later on in life. But why do we want to bully? And as parents, we need to ensure that we stop our kids from bullying. It's so important. Teach the children while they're young. I keep reiterating, we've got to teach them the differences in people. We've got to have them understand that disabilities, remind them, all people have strengths and weaknesses. So if you've got someone, if you're looking at disabilities, I mean, you can have someone who is autistic and they might be on the spectrum, whether high or low on the spectrum. However, they might have struggles engaging eye-to-eye contact. But trust me, they will probably be fantastic in the field of arts, music, or mathematics. And your other child might suck at that area. So you've got to teach your child. You cannot pick on someone who might have a disability because they will kick their butts in another area. So even though there's a difference, understand they have an excelled strength in somewhere else. Look at the cultures, understand cultures. They're interesting, they're amazing. Talk about it, understand. Beliefs. I mean, learning about the different religions it enlightens you. It gives you more understanding on how each person works. Sexual orientation. Understand the differences. Stop picking on people. Everyone has the strengths and weaknesses. That's it. If we are constantly encouraging our children from a young age to accept these wonderful differences, learn from people around you, they learn more while they're younger. Then they are more tolerant while they're younger. You'll find as they grow, they are a lot stronger in their emotional well-being. We've also got to teach our children, again, someone could be going through something traumatic. Perhaps, perhaps someone's parents are splitting up, perhaps someone's gran or grandfather's died, or pets died, and they're emotional about this. And what they could do is just a friend to talk to, or a hug, or something. Because you know what? You've got to teach your kids. One day you're going to go through that. One of your pets are going to die. One of your grandparents, or your parents, or something. Something awful is going to happen to you. You're going to need a friend who feels that too. Be there for that person, because one day you're going to need it. And that's where commonality kicks in. So don't pick on people because you don't know what they're going through. Perhaps sit down and have a conversation. See if you can just be there. And then you can actually explain or get your children to understand more. So let's look at the other ones. The youth is what counts. So again, I'm always pushing on the youth, teaching them that while they are young, under 5 years, this is the crucial part. This is responsibility of the parents. I've said, that 5 years is the most foundational part of every single person's life. You've got to teach them to feel their emotions, their understanding of what's inside of them, encourage them to reach out. You are giving them empathy and introducing them to tolerance. And we as parents need to make the most of those 5, maybe 7 years. We've got to make the most of those 5 years to make a difference to their future. And going back to that original list of the reasons for carrying, reasons for bullying, it's that fear. Community effort. This is something we all have to. We can't remove fear on our own. We all have to make this work. All need to commit to raising stronger children. Remove the inability to talk and learn and add value back to life. If we are all able to raise stronger children, we will be able to start removing the fear. We have brought in this sense of fear over the last probably 4 decades. It's not going to go away overnight. It's going to take time, but it takes one community at a time to allow this to happen. Prove to people that we can remove the fear, because we cannot bring in fear as one human to another. We need to remove it. Practice what we preach as parents. So, yes, we want to teach tolerance to our children, but we can't teach it if we're not practicing it. We are the role models for children. They do as we do. They learn from what our actions are. Actions speak louder than words. We have to be the leaders of our children, or what their children need to see. So if we want our children to be better than what we've done in the last 4 decades or longer, we need to show them what we mean by understanding, by emotion, by tolerance. We need to show them how to do it. We can't just say, do as I say and not as I do. We have to be able to show them more and give them examples and give them more information to let them understand what we mean when we say this, that, and the next. Back to my topic that I've talked about on a number of my videos before, the emotions. If children are able to understand their own emotions and can discuss and learn from early age to cope with sadness, happiness, and when things go wrong, by you as parents giving scenarios, they can learn to cope with things. They also need to learn to love themselves. They need to love themselves as they are. With all of us, we're all imperfect, being imperfect. And we need to teach our children to love ourselves as they will love themselves as they are. And this will help when they grow up into teen lives with their partners and breakups, because they won't get so hung up, because with their future relationships, they have to learn how to deal with breakups and that heartbreak and all those sorts of things that go around. Because what happens is what we've seen if you hear of all these cases on the news, if you watch any of these situations on YouTube, you will see if our children are not able to deal with relationships as a mature adult, you find them stalking. People can't handle being broken up with, so people end up stalking, or they end up searching for revenge and causing horrendous damage to their partners, and they are not stable in themselves to have healthy relationships. And this is why we need to give them the adequate foundations to understand, love themselves, and deal with their emotions. And you can't do it from 10 or 16. Again, teach them from the young years, young and fun years. As I've said, those 5 to 7 years are great. But you cannot take this for granted. It's the most crucial years of your child's life, as it's going to design who your child's going to be as an adult. You have to make the most of this. You can't just make them into a toy and dress them up and forget the lessons, forget the boundaries, forget the important during this period. You've got to teach and set all the rules in place during this period. Don't think it's all just fun and games. Mistakes while young. If you're going to spoil and treat them like a breakable doll and not set all the rules in place, they are not going to cope with life. If you're going to teach them about life and prepare them, give them their foundations correctly with emotions and their understanding of who they are, how to work with themselves, they will grow up strong and ready to cope with life. So, as promised, we're going to look at some of the cases that I've seen over a couple of years, which really have set in my mind. And, we've got to look at these and see perhaps they could have turned out differently. I am not adding the names of, I've put the names of the victims. I am not mentioning the names of the perpetrators in these stories because I think they've had enough glory in the news. So I'm only putting the victims' names up on the screen. Here we have Nohima Graba. She's 60. She was 66. It's a US case. She was a Spanish teacher and apparently she was loved. She was killed by 2 students for giving one of them a bad grade. He was so focused on his GPA. And I mean, who got the bad grade? It was his responsibility to sort out his GPA. So if this person had learned how to deal with loss, emotions, and managing his expectations and handling failing, failing is okay. If he had dealt with that as a child and known it's okay to screw up, he wouldn't have possibly gone to this extent. Maybe there was too many pressures, or it was so many different things. But if he had actually managed to deal with emotions, loss, and failing at something earlier on in life, this woman would not have lost her life. I mean, over a grade is the most ridiculous thing, and so many people were impacted. It was so unnecessary. Looking at the next one, UK case. This 2-year-old, James, I mean, we all heard about this one across the world. Tiny little boy, and I mean, he was just starting his life. And he was brutally killed by 2 10-year-old boys. 10-year-old. I mean, it's a mind-blowing concept that you've got a 10-year-old that could possibly do this. And there was no reason. They perhaps were bored, but they had this mindset. They wanted to see what it's like and what would it feel like to take another person's life. So perhaps, I'm saying perhaps it really, you do have a bad seed, but you've got 2 in this case. But if these boys had been taught the value of life and the emotions and empathy, dealing with those emotions, understanding, it might not have happened. Perhaps the parents might have been a bit more aware that there was trouble brewing between these 2 boys, picking up those telltale signs. And, you can't put blame on parents, but monitoring your children need to be in place. You need to look out for that emotional aspect that might be missing. Is your children more interested in topics that they shouldn't be, or is this something you need to investigate? Because then you can take that to the next level, understand something. So parents need to pick up on these things, because to have 2 boys put in prison and to lose this beautiful little boy so young, it was just horrendous. And I do believe it could have been prevented if the parenting skills, if that parental guidance was in place. Then this one, Conrad Roy the third, I mean, most beautiful. He would diarize his stories. He knew he was dealing with depression, but he was willing to fight for it. He was really working hard to work through his depression, and he had such a supportive family. And I say so-called girlfriend because I don't see how she was his girlfriend, but she actually talked him into killing himself via texts. And I definitely won't mention her name. She was 17 years old. And she was actually doing it because she was trying to get attention from her. She was trying to get friends, actually. She was trying to gain some friendships and sympathy because she wanted him to kill himself so she could gain groups of friends and have them all pity her for her loss. And she had no emotional empathy of the context of what this would do. And then once she realized he had actually taken his life, then I think the penny might have actually dropped that this had actually happened. But the damage was done. And she is out of prison, but I don't know if she understands the impact, what her actions have taken. I mean, I know she had her own issues to deal with. She was also going through depression, but she had given her own basis on the understanding of compassion and emotions at a young level. That, she would have been able to have her own strength, love herself, get more of that. She might not have needed other people's adoration or other people's friendships. It's that socialization again. Why do you need someone else's confirmation of your own excellence? And she was looking for something that wasn't there. She needed it. She had it in herself. And for that, she did something awful. And we lost Conrad. It was so unnecessary. Then we had Samantha. Samantha was 18. She was a young mother in the UK again. And she went out for the first time after having her little girl. And she was killed viciously by a 15-year-old girl. This 15-year-old girl had a pretty decent upbringing, but then she got involved with bad people, and then she got into drugs and alcohol. I mean, at 15, just says so much, and we need to see if she had had the right guidance as a young child to say, what are you going to get out of hanging out with these wrong people? Where's your value for yourself? Know what's right for you so you aren't involved with these negative people. Make sure you're making the right choices for yourself. Perhaps this 15-year-old wouldn't have got involved here, and we would have had Samantha with us today. So it's heartbreaking to know that we could have kept Samantha in the world, and this 15-year-old wouldn't have thrown her life away. Then we have Diane and Alan Johnson. They were killed by their own daughter. They didn't want her seeing her boyfriend. They didn't think he was any good for her, and they banned her from seeing him. So her response to this was to kill her own parents. Now, if you look at it, in any healthy relationship, your parents are what bring you into this world. Your parents protect you. Your parents love you. And this result is that this child kills your parents. I mean, you have to wonder, what on earth How do you get that far off the straight and narrow road to get to the stage? So did she have the right emotional understanding of who she was? Did she have that EQ as a child to understand that her parents would be there for every step of her life? They would be there for the good and the bad. They would help her make the best decisions for herself. She needed to understand that they were there for the right aspects. Why on earth would she go out so far off that road? So if there was that right understanding as a child, would this have happened? Perhaps with this boyfriend, maybe he put so much nonsense into her head that she caused this. But I'd like to assume that if she'd had that right understanding, that right inner strength given to her as a child, knowing her parents would be there forever, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. Then another case in the US, Joe and Joy Pittman. They were in their 60s and they were killed by their 12-year-old grandson. And this it's a bit of a mixed up story. Granted, his medication was incorrect, but he had no stable childhood. I mean, if he had the stable childhood, he wouldn't have been on the medication. So here I say, if his parents could have given him that stable setting, because he went to his grandparents, things were settled and everything was okay. Then his father dragged him back to his father's house and things went haywire there. Then he had to go on to antidepressants, which he shouldn't have been on so young. And then he got thrown back to his grandparents and they actually didn't even recognize him the second time he went back to them because he was so messed up on these antidepressants, which in theory should have only been given to him when he was 18. And then he started acting out violent and he was so unsettled. He didn't have any grounding. And a child needs boundaries. They need routine. They need stability. It's one of Maslow's hierarchy needs. It's the base level. Give me a stable home. This boy didn't have that stable home. His mother, granted, she was completely out of the picture because of her drugs and everything else. His father kept pulling him back and forth. If he had just left this boy with his grandparents to give them the stable home and not pulled him out, this would not have happened. And they would have continued giving him that happy environment where he was. But you can't keep dragging children back and forth, stability, routine, boundaries, understanding all of that. And I mean, obviously there was the mixed medications, which should never have happened, but we know that. I won't go into that portion. And I think this is the last case I put up on the board, is Derek Roby. Beautiful little 4-year-old, and he was killed by a 13-year-old. I think everyone's seen this case. And he killed this little 4-year-old because he, the 13-year-old, was bullied by others. So he felt he wanted to take it out on someone else, so he took it out on a 4-year-old. So if he was given better coping skills and others were a bit kinder to him, this would have been avoided. So again, tolerance, teaching others for tolerance, teaching each child to have that coping mechanism, coping skills, emotional understanding so that you can manage. This could have been avoided. Derek would have been in our world today, and probably, I'm not sure what year this happened, but he would have been an adult at this stage. So it's a loss, an unnecessary loss, when it could have been avoided if we have done the right thing for our children. If we teach and raise our children right, we could avoid some of these cases. Back to socializing. We need to teach our children to play and socialize, teach them to share and be kind. If they struggle with a skill, get them help. This will help with the incels that cause harm later. Now, granted, incels, involuntary celibates, it's their choice. If you are a voluntary celibate, it is your choice. There is some, and I must say that percentage in this group of people are in a very bad space, and we've had a lot of cases where they have caused damage and they have gone out and caused problems. But if we are able to teach children as young children how to socialize, how to engage, they won't have this involuntary celibate. They will be able to actually engage with the people they want to have relationships with. So let's make sure we're monitoring our children. Let's make sure they are able to socialize. If you're seeing your child is struggling with this, please talk to a medical expert as early as possible. Deal with the small problems as you can help prevent the major mental issues later. We are dealing with so many mental issues worldwide. This times 10 gone around the world. If you deal with it quickly while they're young, we don't have the bigger issues. I mean, parents across the world now have left this for 40 odd years, and now we are dealing with the repercussions. Start dealing with it. Otherwise, we are just going to have bigger issues. We need to do this and get better on. Our parent roles. Look for signs and help people grow. Parents and teachers need to stay in touch, and don't take offense if someone approaches you and says, do you think this needs to be looked at, or your child has this? Take it as someone is caring. Someone is also looking out for your child. It is what is needed. Our children are our future. As I said in the slide before, we have to make a change. The damage is so big out there. We cannot let it keep getting bigger. We need to get those mental illnesses and all the healthcare numbers to drop. So let's start taking gratitude. If people approach us, start listening. Perhaps someone else sees something we don't see. That suggestion and say, maybe that person's seeing something I'm not seeing. Consider it. Go and see what you can do. It's always a big help. Remember, sweeping issues under the carpet is only going to cause you to trip on them later. Help while they are young to avoid the bigger impacts later on.